And I found that very interesting when we were having our discussions and conversations prior to this call, where you said you basically have two lines of or two tracks of how you work in the area of compliance, which is kind of a comfort flexibility kind of approach where you do the routine stuff, and then the firefighting mode where you do all of that stuff you just talked about. So the emergency things that come in are different from the standard. Can you give a few insights on how you're working and how especially your team supports that firefighting mode, if I'm allowed to use that?
Yeah. So I think that's the right way to phrase that. It is really firefighting. As I said, for the routine requests, it's easy. Everything is set. Yeah, you have a process flow. Everybody knows what is to do, and in the end, there is a fixed result. You throw it out, and everybody knows what to do with the result. For the firefighting, in most cases, you need first of all find out what it is about. Yeah, so there is no established process. You need to understand the task itself. That is the first thing. You need to collect what is necessary. Do you have a substance group? Do you need to define a substance group? Are there any additional rules? As I said before, all of that is important. But what is also important is that you have the responsibility set as well. Yeah, so that is quite important. Otherwise, when you enter this and somebody asks you about a deadline, you would say, I have no idea. Especially in firefighting, they are always asking, when can I get the result? And that is when there is no experience with that, you can only get a rough idea about that. And so the firefighting is where it gets really interesting when the customer tells you, I want to have this results in 2 days. Full stop.
Okay.
And you just need to provide kind of result, and sometimes it's not possible, depending on what you are expected. So the deadline sometimes includes that you go through the complete supply chain just to arrive at a specific manufacturer at the very upstream point of the supply chain. And with our supply chains, this might take some time. So firefighting, from my point of view, is very interesting. It shows how flexible an organization is when it comes to these kind of requests, and how good people can work together. And for that, I think since we had a lot of firefighting activities during the last years, we also have some kind of a small process established already, so that makes it quite easy to just know the people to approach in order to make it work. That is quite important. To have a key person to go to, so that you can solve issues related to engineering, related to purchasing, and so on. And that here also helps to keep the discussion on the correct level of detail. Because sometimes people run around and get lost in the amount of data. So this is one example. The request starts with a request for Teflon. Why are you having Teflon inside? You open the data sheet and you find something totally different. For example, you find that a pop substance is exceeding the threshold. So you are already exploding the whole thing. So you never know what comes out of that. But in the end, the right level of detail then is quite important. You first need to solve the Teflon thing, and then you can tackle the other one. So it's quite important, and this happens on every level. Also engineering, they are thinking then this part is affected, so then the other part is also affected. What shall we do? So that is quite important. Stick to the details, stick to the rules, and stick to the requests. That is very important.